Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Mishapam Sabadarajakachaya, Stote Satasimad, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Jai Vishnupam Sabadarajakachaya, Stote Satasimad, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada Ki, Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 25, The Glories of Devotional Service, Text 22. Mayy ananyena bhāvena bhaktiṁ kurvanti dṛḍhām mat-kṛte tyakta-karmāṇas tyakta-svajana-bāndhavāḥ mayy ananyena bhāvena bhaktiṁ kurvanti dṛḍhām mat-kṛte tyakta-karmāṇas, tyakta-svajana-bāndhavāḥ, mayy ananyena bhāvena, bhaktiṁ kurvanti dṛḍhām, mat-kṛte tyakta-karmāṇas, tyakta-svajana-bāndhavāḥ. Vaishnavis, mayy unto me, ananyena bhāvena, with undeviated mind, bhaktim, devotional service, kurvanti, perform, yea, those who, dṛḍhām, staunch, mat-kṛte, for my sake, tyakta, renounced, karmāṇaḥ, activities, tyakta, renounced, sva-jana, family relationships, bāndhavāḥ, friendly acquaintances. Translation: such a sādhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. Purport: a person in the renounced order of life, a sannyāsī, is also called a sādhu because he renounces everything: his home, his comfort, his friends, his relatives, and his duties to friends and to family. He renounces everything for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A sannyāsī is generally in the renounced order of life, but his renunciation will be successful only when his energy is employed in the service of the Lord with great austerity. It is said here, therefore, bhaktim kurvanti dṛḍhām. A person who seriously engages in the service of the Lord and is in the renounced order of life is a sādhu. A sādhu is one who has given up all responsibility to society, family, and worldly humanitarianism simply for the service of the Lord. As soon as he takes birth in the world, a person has so many responsibilities and obligations to the public, to the demigods, to the great sages, to the general living beings, to his parents, to the family, forefathers, and to many others. When he gives up all such obligations for the sake of the service of the Supreme Lord, he is not punished for such renunciation of obligation. But if for sense gratification a person renounces all such obligations, he is punished by the law of nature. Translation again. Such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militangena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The important point that Lord Kapila Dev is focusing on is the staunch, unbroken engagement in devotional service. Yesterday we heard so sincerely from Naikatma Prabhu about the verse Tatikshava Karanika, the various embellishments, the various decorations of a sadhu. The acharyas explain, and certainly Srila Prabhupada did, that there is the tatastha lakshana, the immediate aspects, or the secondary aspects, and then there is the sarupa lakshana, the essential aspect. The essential aspect, sarupa lakshana, is being talked about in this verse. The sadhu engages in staunch devotional service. Because of that sarupa lakshana, that essential characteristic, then you can have for real the tatastha lakshana, the secondary aspects like tolerance, merciful, having no enemies, peaceful, abiding by the scripture. But without the sarupa lakshana, the essential core characteristic of engagement in devotional service, you really don't have any secondary aspects that are of any importance. Sometimes people object. Why does Bhagavad Gita stress devotional service, devotional service, devotional service? And then you come to the devotee community and everyone wants to know, what's your service? What's the service you're doing? And you may think, well, I want to be peaceful, I want to be tolerant, that's all well and good. But without the sarupa lakshana, the core essential characteristic of unbroken engagement in devotional service, there won't be the proper development of these secondary aspects. We talked the other day about going to the Ganga, where Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya are floating on the current down to the house of Advaita Acharya. So what's happening while they're floating in the waves? Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur says, this should remind you of Kshirodakashayi Vishnu seated or laying on Anantashesh on the Kshirodaka, the ocean of milk. So as Lord Chaitanya is floating down the Ganga and Lord Nityananda is there with him floating down the Ganga, think of Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead's plenary upon plenary expansion, and he's the portal through which the avatars appear in the material world. And then he's sitting on or laying on Anantashesh. So they're both floating in the Kshirodaka. And now they're floating on the Ganga to the home of Shantipurnath, who is Advaita Acharya. And what's happening on their way? Knowing that will help us to understand what is this necessity of undeviated devotional service. Suddenly, Lord Chaitanya roars, I am he! I am he! And Nityananda is just watching and smiling silently as they float down the Ganga. I am he! I am he! Nada, Advaita Acharya, called me into this world to reveal the glories of bhakti. And now what is Nada doing? He is covering the glories of devotional service by speaking that Gyan alone by itself is most important. Why is Advaita Acharya doing this? The one who has called Lord Chaitanya into the world, you may remember from Adi Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita, worshiping Shalagram Shila, calling out with loud cries, Advaita Acharya, overwhelmed by seeing the sinful activity of the world, even in Navadvip, where there's so much Vedic stuff going on, except for devotional service. So Advaita Acharya is calling out with loud cries. So this is what Lord Chaitanya is referring to. I was sleeping in the ocean of milk on Anantashesh, and these loud cries woke me, and I came to reveal the glories of devotional service as requested by Advaita Acharya. But what is Advaita Acharya doing now? He's covering the glories. He's denying the exclusive glories of bhakti. Why is Advaita Acharya doing this? He wants to be chastised by Lord Chaitanya. And he's devised a plot. You see, Advaita Acharya is the godbrother of Lord Chaitanya's guru, Ishvara Puri. So Lord Chaitanya is always treating Advaita Acharya with respect, veneration. And Advaita Acharya doesn't want it. He wants to be treated as the servant of Lord Chaitanya. As Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us, sometimes Advaita Acharya, he's sitting down, and then suddenly he jumps up. I'm the servant of Lord Chaitanya. I'm the servant of Lord Chaitanya. I'm the servant of his servants. And then he sits down quietly again. This is what he wants. He wants to be treated as Mahaprabhu's servant. But he doesn't get it. So he devises a plot. What is he going to do? He's going to preach that bhakti is not necessary and that jnana, metaphysical speculation, is the ultimate. So Lord Chaitanya knows this, but he doesn't acknowledge that it's just a conspiracy, it's a plot by Advaita Acharya. He's responding to the fact Advaita Acharya is deviating. I'm going to do something about it. We'll see when I get to his house what is the truth. I'll take action. Meanwhile, Advaita Acharya is omniscient. He knows what's going on. He knows Mahaprabhu is floating down the Ganga with Nityananda on the way to his house. And so what does he do? This is just what I want. Mahaprabhu, he's angry. He's going to chastise me finally. And so what does Advaita Acharya start doing? He starts preaching even more boldly. Jnana is the ultimate. Jnana is the everything. Just to provoke Lord Chaitanya more. So Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, they arrive at his house, Advaita Acharya's house. And you have Haridas Thakur, who was living there at the time. You have the famous son of Advaita Acharya, Achyuta. Advaita Acharya's two wives are there. The servants are there. And everyone is seeing Mahaprabhu enter, blazing like millions of suns. And so, Lord Chaitanya says to him, so tell me, Advaita Acharya, what is superior, jnana or bhakti? Advaita Acharya is very cagey. He responds, all you need is jnana. If you have jnana, what's the need of bhakti? Oh, Lord Chaitanya just enters a rage. He grabs Advaita Acharya, who had been expounding the so-called glories of jnana without bhakti. He had been expounding it so powerfully. He was into it so much in his preaching that he was rocking back and forth. Jnana is the everything. Jnana, bhakti is subordinate. Bhakti is not necessary. So Lord Chaitanya has grabbed him, pulled him off his seat, out of the house, into the courtyard, and starts beating him. And Advaitacharya's wife Sita is begging Lord Chaitanya, please stop this, stop this. He's an old man. What do you want to do with him? If you kill an old man, how are you going to atone for the responsibility? Please stop this, stop this. She's speaking as a chaste wife. And Nityananda is smiling. He doesn't say anything. He understands what's going on. Everyone in the house is, they're just totally astonished because Lord Chaitanya is beating Advaitacharya. Finally, Lord Chaitanya comes out of his anger trance and he sits at the doorway and he begins to explain his own glories. I'm the one who killed Kamsa. I'm the one who killed Narakasura, Bhaumasura, all these. I'm the one who's done it. And then Advaitacharya is so happy. His conspiracy has worked. He says, now you are finally treating me as I want to be treated. I'm your eternal servant. You've been glorifying me so much in the past. In other words, you've been ruining our relationship in which I am your servant. You've treated me with such veneration and respect. But now just see what's happening. You've beaten me. Oh, this is so wonderful. So Lord Chaitanya calms down and he offers a benediction to Advaitacharya because Advaitacharya has fallen at his feet, putting his head at Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet. And so Lord Chaitanya says, let me offer you this benediction. In other words, Mahaprabhu, out of his trance of rage, understands he's been scammed. And Advaitacharya set him up, purposely trying to anger him so Advaitacharya can be beaten by Lord Chaitanya, chastised by Lord Chaitanya, having his status, Advaitacharya's status as servant of Lord Chaitanya, having that ratified by his being beaten by Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu realizes what's happening and he offers a benediction to Advaitacharya. Let it be known that if any living entity, cat, bird, insect, any kind of animal even, if they offer you, Advaitacharya, devotion for just a moment, they'll get my mercy. And then what does Advaitacharya say? Here is the reality that if anyone comes to me with devotion and neglects you, he says to Lord Chaitanya, then may their so-called devotion to me be the cause of their own annihilation. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya and Advaitacharya highlight the point of bhakti, devotional service, being the all in all. Sometimes people think that bhakti means just have a devotional attitude in your mind towards everything and anything. But bhakti means for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in this way, if we live in a community that is offering opportunity for unbroken devotional service, that is the greatest benediction. So difficult to attain life after life. One new devotee yesterday was telling me, I've just been here a month. I must have done something in countless lifetimes to be able to be here. He had that understanding, and he's right. In Melbourne, Australia, Srila Prabhupada was speaking something very powerful. I said the other day how he revealed that if someone takes one of his books from a Sankirtan devotee, or whoever is distributing his books, someone takes the book in their hand, appreciates it, very nice, hands it back to the distributor, but not today. That appreciation is enough to give that person a guaranteed human form of life in the next birth. So another thing he said was that you're not living in the material world if you're in a temple and you are staunchly engaged in devotional service. Ananya bhakti, unbroken devotional service. Ananya bhava, that emotional state of being constantly thinking, what gives Krishna the best pleasure? That means you're not in the material world anymore. So he was explaining that if your attitude in being in the temple community is, how can I offer service to Krishna according to what Krishna wants? Then you're not in the material world anymore. If you're always thinking, how can I render service for the pleasure of the deities according to their desire, service done according to their desire, then you're not in the material world anymore. Srila Prabhupada explained. He said, you're in Vaikuntha. He said, you're in Vrindavan. All the devotees roared, Jai! You have a choice. When you want to be the enjoyer, you're in the material world. When you offer yourself for Krishna's pleasure and you engage constantly in devotional service, you've left the material world. So that is the advantage of living in a temple community. So this new devotee had some realization. How did I get here? Because I was asking him, what brought you here? And so he was saying, I must have had many lifetimes of doing everything else except devotional service, and somehow or other, by the mercy of the devotees, I'm here. So the mercy of the devotees, the mercy of the sadhus means you get opportunities for devotional service constantly. So much so that you can aspire for the realization, for the reality that you are not in the material world. You're in Vaikuntha. Indeed, you're in Vrindavan. When Lord Chaitanya appeared in Puri after trying to go to Vrindavan, he was explaining to the devotees in Puri, I tried my best to go, but there were so many huge crowds around me. Sanatana Goswami, who had just met Lord Chaitanya at Ramkeli, Sanatana Goswami told me that you don't go to Vrindavan with massive crowds. And I began to think, he's right. At first, I didn't take it so seriously, but then later I began to consider, and I decided, what's the use? People will think I'm just some kind of magician, having a big crowd around me, going to Vrindavan to cheat people. So he went back to Puri, and he explained to the devotees, this is what happened. Do I have your blessings to make another attempt to go to Vrindavan? And then he revealed something that's very intimate. He said, actually, how could I go to Vrindavan when Gadadhar Pandit is here unhappy? So mainly because of his unhappiness, I came back. So Gadadhar Pandit falls at Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet, clasps his feet, and says, the reality is, wherever you are is Vrindavan. You don't need to go to Vrindavan, but you do so, you agree to travel to Vrindavan to set an example for the ordinary persons. But actually, wherever you are is Vrindavan, wherever you are is the Yamuna River, wherever you are is the Ganga, all the places of pilgrimage are wherever you are. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains something very astonishing. He explains how in Vrindavan, so many people want to enter into Radha Krishna Leela, but it's very difficult. But if we follow Sri Sri Gaur Nitai, that is the best way to try to enter into Radha Krishna's pastimes. by focusing on Sri Sri Gaur Nitai. Krishna and Balaram have come as Gauranga and Nityananda. Without focusing on them, it's practically impossible in the age of Kali to become absorbed in Krishna's pastimes. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that by serving Gauranga Mahaprabhu in dasya, in servitorship, all the other rasas open up by your declaring yourself and acting as the servant of Lord Chaitanya, who says, wherever you go, whomever you meet, teach the science of Krishna. That's the gateway to all the other rasas, just by your being the servant of Lord Chaitanya. So Prabhupada explains that there are so many associates of Lord Chaitanya who, from the ordinary point of view, from the physical point of view, never went to Vrindavan. He presents a whole list in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Swarup Damodar, Haridas Thakur. There's no record of them ever going to Vrindavan, yet they are eternal Brajavasis. So he ends a very dramatic purport by saying, the members of our Krishna consciousness movement, they're living in big cities. He names them, Los Angeles included. And he says, they're actually not living in these cities because they are having Krishna Kirtan all the time. Therefore, they live in Vrindavan and nowhere else. Of course, we want to aspire for that realization, but Srila Prabhupada is presenting the transcendental fact and showing us what is the peak potential of devotional service. So we want to plan out our life so that we can one day attain something close to ananya bhakti, undeviated devotional service. So we're always concerned, how is Krishna relishing or not what I'm doing? And is what I'm doing what Krishna wants of me? That attitude, even trying to develop that attitude, puts you in a completely different dimension. Just like thinking that we are the material enjoyer, that puts you in another dimension. So this is the nature of tatastha shakti, the marginal potency of Krishna. You can go either way. Krishna has given us a tiny, tiny bit of independence to choose which river we're going to be swept away in, the river of materialism or the river of devotional service. Once you jump in, you're carried away. But you have the tiny bit of independence to choose how you're going to be swept away. So in material life, we make such a big thing about our material options, our material possibilities. We inflate ourselves into being some kind of big controller and enjoyer. And as I often explain, the way the material world's constructed is that as soon as you want to enjoy, you have to control. Even that control may be so slight and so subtle. Still, maybe you're just moving your eyebrows, giving a look, changing the inflection of your voice. How are you doing today? That's control. You can't experience any kind of material enjoyment without some degree of control. And that means we're misusing our independence. But if we declare ourselves to Krishna, I'm here in the temple community for your pleasure. And most of all, I want to do something that you want me to do. Then you've left the material world. And the more you retain that kind of consciousness and deepen it, the more you realize, indeed, you're living in Vrindavan. So this is the benediction that the deities are giving us. They're giving us a chance to see them and serve them through parampara, spread their glories. And the more our service attitude thickens, to the extent we can aspire for this, I can't live without glorifying Krishna. Then you know your spiritual health has returned. So let us remember how Lord Chaitanya dealt with Advaita Acharya to establish the exclusive glories of bhakti. And let us remember how Advaita Acharya chose to intimidate Lord Chaitanya, to anger him by pretending to deny the exclusivity of bhakti by exalting jnana, metaphysical speculation on Brahman, as the ultimate. If you got that, who needs bhakti? And this brought about such a severe reaction that Lord Chaitanya was beating Advaita Acharya, to Advaita Acharya's great satisfaction. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Yes.
I wanted to ask, how can we cultivate deep and loving relationship with devotees just like we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita?
To develop deeper relationships with devotees. Just like I had a very wonderful discussion with Suvas Prabhu yesterday, I felt so energized, so focused. You actually, to develop deeper relationships, need Krishna's help. I often explain, there's no mundane social skills that really can deepen your relationship with devotees. Sometimes you may think, I'm kind of a shy person. I don't have the gift of the gab. So therefore, how do I develop relationships with devotees? But those relationships with Vaishnavas are not dependent on mundane social skills, like how to win friends and influence people. You've read that book? Who's read it? Yes. This won't help you deepen relationships with devotees. You need divine empowerment. You need to beg the deities, please teach me, please empower me to relate to devotees, how to deepen my relationship with them. It's not a material skill, it's a spiritual empowerment. Otherwise, materially, we're all so different. You can look in the room, and for many of you, the persons you're associating with here in the temple community, in your material karmi life, you'd never associate with such persons. Maybe unless you're from India, but if you're from a non-Indian background and you look around in the room, think, if it wasn't for bhakti, I wouldn't be around any of these people. So materially, we're also different, but spiritually, because we're serving Krishna, our bond is much deeper than any kind of ethnic, nationalistic, gender, whatever. Our bond is much deeper than that. But you have to beg the deities for the empowerment to realize that. If you take your association with devotees as something very casual, yeah, Prabhu, how are you today? Yeah, I see you every day walking on the Vatsika Avenue. Everydayism is the enemy of Vaishnava relationships. Every day I see these Prabhus. Another day, another devotional service. Yeah, what do you want now? Yeah, I'm on the roster. All right. The more you take an opportunity to associate with devotees as divine, the more Krishna will give you the empowerment, how to relate to devotees. Even sometimes they tick you off. We're all individuals, and sometimes we have disagreements how to serve Krishna best. So you're thinking, how can that devotee think like that? I mean, it's quite obvious what I'm trying to do, and this devotee doesn't understand. So that happens. But if you always try to see how each devotee is trying to serve Krishna and pray for the intelligence how to handle even those you disagree with, life will be different. But you can't do it without Krishna's mercy. So you have to come before the deities and beg. And we hate to beg. We're too proud to beg. But if you want the depths of Vaishnava association, you beg for that. Another point is we're not impersonalists. It is a fact that even amongst devotee relationships, you associate more with those who share your devotional vision. That may sound surprising that, well, shouldn't we just try to focus on relationships with all Vaishnavas? Yes, you try to appreciate them nicely, but it is an undeniable fact of transcendence. What is it called? Sva-jana? What's the other one? No, huh? Yes, yes. You associate with those who share a similar spiritual aspiration. You associate with them more deeply. But first of all, you have to have some spiritual aspirations. And then it's natural that you can spend more time with those who share the same service aspirations. This is the way of Goloka Vrindavan. Different gopis who have different service inclinations, they associate with each other for Krishna's pleasure. And sometimes they even argue with other gopis who have a different service inclination. But that's also for Krishna's pleasure. Anyway, that's another thing. But for now, you pray to Krishna, please give me the empowerment to relish devotee association. I'll confess, since this is, I think, my last class I'm giving here. When I was walking down Watsika Avenue to visit Swavas Prabhu, I do what I normally do. Not that I am anything great, but since you asked, it's my duty to try to answer. I was praying to Krishna, how can I benefit from this Vaishnavas association? And I feel that I got that benefit. But my point is whether I was able to perceive the benefit or not, my point is I was begging for it. Otherwise, I could just walk down the street chanting Hare Krishna and another day, another devotee. But I was praying, as I tried to do, not always am I successful, but I tried to do upon meeting any devotee. How can I recognize the glories of this devotee? How can I benefit from this devotee's association? So my point is, it takes effort. It's like this morning when I came to greet the deities, I saw Satyanarayan Prabhu, and he was watering Tulsi Devi. I wanted to say something to him, but he's just, wait a minute. He wanted to finish his devotion to Tulsi Devi. And so I was appreciating how dedicated he is to, even though Tulsi Puja happened this morning, early after Mangalartik, still he's seizing the opportunity. So I noted that. I'm going to do the same also. This is the Vaishnava sport. And now you got me going. It's very much brought out in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So Vas Prabhu and I were talking about such books yesterday. Brihad Bhagavatamrita is the gold standard for Vaishnava translations that have come out after Prabhupada's departure. So there, Narada Muni is touring the whole universe, trying to find who has the greatest amount of Krishna's mercy. Where do I find the devotee who has the most of Krishna's mercy? So each devotee he approaches, whether Lord Shiva, Prahlad Maharaj, Hanuman, the Pandavas, wherever he goes, I've heard you are the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy. Me? You need to go to that devotee. He or she is the one who's got all the mercy. So in this way, they're sending Narada Muni on the most ecstatic wild goose chase. He's going all over the universe. You are the greatest devotee. I've just heard. No, not me. It's that one. When he is sent by the Pandavas to the Yadus, and the Yadus put forth Uddhava. Uddhava, when Narada Muni approaches him, saying, "So now you are the one, I've heard." And what does Uddhava start doing? He starts crying. What is he crying for? What is he thinking? He's crying, thinking of all the unlimited Vaishnavas who are better servants than him. So he's being glorified, and what's the effect? He starts crying that, in no way can I match the service of all these other devotees. But then things take a transcendental turn, which may be difficult for many of us to understand. First, the humility. And then Uddhava starts feeling jealous, transcendental jealousy. Krishna is mine. I'm Krishna's friend. I'm his advisor. How can that be transcendental? Because it's giving Krishna pleasure. Krishna is my friend. I don't know an example how in material life how you could relate to that. This is, well, I don't know. I can't. Maybe married persons can say, "This is my husband. This is my wife." Possessiveness. It's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita as mamata. Krishna is mine. So first, Uddhava is so humble. Oh, there's so many Vaishnavas better than me. He breaks down crying. But then a surge of transcendental jealousy. The jealousy is transcendental because there's no malice. It's an emotion of the spiritual world, which Krishna enjoys, especially when Krishna's consorts, when they exercise jealousy over him. Krishna should come to me. Just like Raghunath Das Goswami explains that when Chandravali has very carefully constructed a grove with flower beds for Krishna to come, and Krishna has come, but then through the air, the wind brings the fragrance of Srimati Radharani. Suddenly Krishna gets up from the flower bed that Chandravali has so carefully constructed and gone. So all this is going on for Krishna's pleasure, this transcendental jealousy. So in that way, Uddhava erupts in this non-material jealousy with no negative effects that we are so acquainted with when we are jealous or envious in the material world. But the point is, notice Narada Muni trying to find which devotee has the greatest amount of Krishna's mercy, and each devotee he goes to says, "Not me, it's someone else." And they're sincere about it. And Narada Muni accepts what they're saying. Sometimes the devotee he's having some difficulty hearing Narada Muni say, "You are the greatest devotee," just like Prahlad Maharaj. Hanuman sent, Lord Shiva sent Narada Muni to Prahlad. And he approaches Prahlad, trying to worship Prahlad, who's his own disciple. Prahlad is deep in meditation. And then in his meditation, because he's the perfection of smaranam, remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's deep in samadhi of remembering Krishna. And then he sees in his samadhi, Narada Muni is approaching. So he comes out of his samadhi just as Narada Muni is there, and he tries to sit Narada Muni down and offer Guru Puja to him. And Narada Muni instead grabs the puja articles and tries to worship Prahlad Maharaj. And embracing Prahlad, "You are the greatest devotee, you are the greatest devotee." And then Narada Muni offers reasons why Prahlad is the greatest devotee. And Prahlad is having difficulty because how can he refute what his guru is saying? He can't tell his guru, "You're wrong." So he says, "All right, you say that I'm always absorbed in remembering Krishna. Let me say that it happens sometimes." So he doesn't say no, and he doesn't say yes. It can happen sometimes, especially when I'm in material distress. I'm motivated to think of Krishna. So in that way, Even though Prahlad is Narada Muni's disciple, he's knowing how to handle the praise of his guru. It doesn't go to his head, but he can't refute it. So he instead kind of sidesteps. So in this way, if you read Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the BBT has published such a wonderful rendition, you'll see the glories of the devotees in their relationships with Krishna and how each devotee thinks, I'm not the one, the other devotee is better. Anything else? Yes. Oh, you're touching your head. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.